Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money. That is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Does Minnesota have a problem with gangs roaming the streets?
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sad to report that Senator Amy Klobuchar and Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota are not taking accountability for what is going on in their state. Now, before Thanksgiving, Donald Trump said that he was going to take away the temporary protected status of Somalis. And he also indicated at further crackdowns when he said that, quote, Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping against hope that they will be left alone. This is the same post where he called Governor Tim Walz retarded. Now, Donald Trump's actions in the state of Minnesota thus far have sparked a lot of speculation about what exactly he plans to do next. In his post, he talked about roving gangs, about Americans who can't even enjoy their own country because it's becoming too dangerous. So naturally, that's led people to wonder what additional steps he might take there. And now, in response, you have Senator Amy Klobuchar and Governor Tim Walz rushing to the media to defend their failing state. And of course, they are taking absolutely zero accountability for the crime in their state. They think it's funny. When asked about what is going on in Minnesota, Senator Amy Klobuchar, she basically says, well, there's crime in every single state. Minnesota doesn't have a crime problem. And then the kicker here is she turns it around onto President Trump and she blames him, saying that he is using a tragedy as a justification to crack down on the state of Minnesota.
Does Minnesota have a problem with gangs roaming the streets?
Every state has a problem with crime, but what the president has done here is taken a horrific crime that occurred in Washington, D.C., where one beloved Guard member is still struggling for his life, another was shot and killed, and the perpetrator, the murderer, is behind bars and being prosecuted. He took that case and then he went 2,400 miles away to Somalia and somehow indicted an entire group of people, 80,000 of them in my state.
Now, we've seen this playbook before. It's the same tired routine, implying that Donald Trump is somehow bigoted because he's drawing a connection between what happened in Washington, D.C. and what's happening in Minnesota. That's what she is saying. So how is she making that accusation exactly? This is what she's saying. Here's the setup. Trump points out that the individual who shot these National Guard members, one of them was a woman, she sadly died. He points out that this person was an immigrant who came here from Afghanistan. That's a fact. From that, she leaps to the conclusion that Trump is targeting Somalis in Minnesota as if he's saying, well, because one immigrant committed a violent act, I'm going to demonize this entire group. But Trump isn't doing that at all. What he's actually doing is acknowledging a real issue. There is corruption in the parts of the Somali community in Minnesota. There are American citizens who feel uncomfortable in their own cities because the culture and norms brought in by large concentrated groups of newcomers are very different from American culture. That's not hatred. That's reality. When big groups arrive from a completely different cultural background and cluster into a single town, single areas, it changes the environment. And many Americans no longer feel at home in the place they grew up. And that's a problem. And that is what Donald Trump is pointing out. On top of that, like he says, he is rooting out the corruption and fraud because some of these individuals are exploiting social safety nets meant for American citizens and using the systems for their own benefit. That's what he's addressing. Not race, not ethnicity, not bigotry, corruption, abuse, and the protection of American communities. And let me tell you something. They are absolutely shaking in their boots. They know Donald Trump is about to drop the hammer in Minnesota. It's over for them. It's over for the corruption. It's over for the open door policy where anyone can come into the state, exploit the system, commit fraud, and walk away with millions. Americans are done. They've had enough, and now it's all being exposed on a national scale. Everyone is seeing it. The blinders are coming off. The scales are falling from people's eyes. Tim Walz and Amy Klobuchar are in full panic mode. They are terrified of what the American people are witnessing right now. And it wasn't just Amy Klobuchar scrambling to the media to defend her collapsing state. Tim Walz jumped in too. He had to defend it. And he used the exact same tactic Amy Klobuchar used. Instead of taking responsibility, he tries to downplay everything. Do you remember the $250 million Feeding Our Future scandal? Restaurants were claiming they were feeding like 6,000 children a day, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars in federal money. Instead of owning up to the corruption, real corruption, Tim Walz, he just shrugs it off and says, oh, that's just fraud. That's not corruption. And then just like Amy Klobuchar, he twists it around and pins the blame on, of course, guess who? You already know, the Trump administration.
Well, speaking of the Somali community, President Trump is targeting them and your state in part. He's citing fraud as the reason for his crackdown. Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. There's a reason Minnesota ranks as the top, lowest childhood poverty, best place for children to live. People are taking advantage of that. They're going to prison. That is totally disconnected with demonizing an entire group of people who came here fleeing civil war and created a vibrant community that makes Minnesota and this country better. But that's Donald Trump. Deflect, demonize, come up with no solutions. He's not going to help fix anything on fraud. My God, there's a big difference between fraud and corruption is something he knows about.
So just like Amy Klobuchar, it's deflect and turn it around on Donald Trump. It's the tools that they use. Every Democrat uses the same tools, and it's crazy. But I did just want to dispel with this one idea that this is not a strictly Somali thing, okay? Now, when we're talking about these hundreds of millions of dollars that were defrauded from the federal government through this Feeding Our Future scam, it was huge. I mean, it was just massive scam. I can't even fathom how big that is. Let's look at the 75 Minnesotans, and this is in quotes. This is by Libs of TikTok. She put out this list, and I think it's fantastic. These are the 75, quote, air quote, Minnesotans charged so far in connection to the $1 billion Feeding Our Future Somalian fraud scheme that unfolded under Tim Walz. And I'm just going to read a few of these. And if you want to pause the video or make the video go slower so you can read all of these names, I want you to try to pick out one name that sounds like it's an actual American name. Let's look here. Amy Marie Bach. Okay, that one could be American, but that is an outlier in this list. Let me tell you, some of these I can't even pronounce. Abdikerm Abdelhai Adele, Salim Ahmad Said, Abdul Qadir Nur Salah, Ahmed Sharif Omar Hashim, Abdi Nur Salah. So yes, look at guys. Okay, I'm going to scroll through this. And, you know, you can take the time yourself to read these. I'm looking to see if I can find one. Asha Jama, that is not American. I'm seeing if I can find one American in this entire list of names. This person right here. Okay, Dorothy Jean Moore. Okay, there's an American. So we got Dorothy Lee Moore, Jean Moore, and Amy Marie Bach. Those are two potential Americans. So Tim Walz saying that Donald Trump is targeting this community and this is wrong and he's bigoted and all these other things. Hey, Donald Trump is doing exactly what Donald Trump needs to do. He's doing exactly what the American people elected him to do. That's to go after crime. That's to go after corruption. That's to go after illegal immigration. And I 100% support what he's doing in Minnesota. He needs to crack down harder. And I cannot wait to see what's coming in the future. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of Senator Amy Klobuchar and Governor Tim Walz going on the media, scrambling to defend their failing state? Let me know what you think about this down below in the comments. Like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. But until then, I'll see you on the next one.